Hi, my name is Katie Becker, and for video number 9, we had to read 3 articles. And the first article was Why Service Learning is Bad. So, service learning has the potential to transfer teaching and learning and to provide quality programs and people to local agencies to work and help transform communities. So, it shows that students develop social responsibility, reduce racism, develop leadership, and gain personal and social skills. So in the article, it talks how this demands a learning orientation, places on service limits, its effectiveness, and its ability to address community needs at a structural level. So the explanations of social issues gained through service learning are often individualistic. Through participation in service learning, students may develop understandings of the nature of social problems and strategies for fundamental social change. The article also talks about the potential negative aspects of service learning, and it gives an example such as that if service learning is done poorly, then it can teach inadequate conceptions of need and service, and it can divert resources of service agencies and do real harm in communities. One of the challenges that service learning faces is to bring to the service end of the service learning equation the same level of rigor, expertise, and critical analysis that has been applied to learning. And this includes responding to the legitimate interests of all stakeholders, following principles of good practice, developing strong college/community partnerships, teaching a sociological imagination, and there are more examples, but that is the gist of that article. The second article was called The Ethic of Care for the Self as a Practice of Freedom, and this article is in the style of an interview with, I think it's pronounced Michel Foucault. And so he's talking about, throughout the article, his book, The Order of Things, and he first starts off with the theme of it, in which he's tried to see it how in scientific creation, the human subject will be defined as an individual who talks, who works, who lives. But the problem of the relationship between the subject and the games of truth has been faced in two ways, either beginning with coercive practices, in the case of psychiatry and the penitentiary system, or in forms of the theoretical or scientific games. But the interviewer then states that the games of truth are no longer in association with coercive practices, but with the practices of self-formation on the subject. The interviewer the respondee then insists on the practices of freedom rather than on the processes which have their place but do not seem to be able to decide all the practical forms of liberty. And throughout the article, they talk about liberty and ethics and morals, and they begin to say that liberation opens up new relationships of power which have to be controlled by practice of liberty, and that liberty must be practiced ethically. And to conclude, I think the main point of the whole article, or the line that stood out to me most was that there's no other principle and useful point of resistance to political power than in the relationship of self to self. So it's really emphasizing the self, and I think that's important. In the last article, it was called Do Something for Your Soul, Go to Haiti. So this was a story about a person who went to a town called, I think it's pronounced Jeannette, along with a Haiti mission of the Episcopal Church in Milwaukee. And so they traveled down to Haiti, and she basically describes her trip. So she starts off saying how she was on a bus ride, talking about local candy to get, how people should help each other in the country because they're very poor, and how the trip took around 4 hours. And once they got to the village, there was kids surrounding them, and the missionaries were throwing balloons up to them. And she said that it reminded her of her childhood, watching Francois Duvalier throw pennies out of his limousine window. So once they got there, they were lodged in the priest's living quarters. And the priest projects for the people included a small dark church and 2 school buildings with tiny dark rooms and blank walls. So she goes around then to describe how the facilities, and she talks about how the teachers' dormitories resembled jail cells, and how the clinic had no bathroom facilities, no running water, no electricity. And she said that most people in Jeannette go for days without a proper meal, walk for miles to get simply water. use the bushes as their bathrooms, and live with infected skin wounds if they can't pay the right amount of money to see the nurses in the clinic. And teachers reported that the children were so hungry that they couldn't pay attention in school, and that the teachers often went days without food. So then it talked about, like, the lack of attention that the missionaries were giving to the people in Jeannette, and they said how they were wasteful, and they also showed a lack of sensitivity towards the people, and they contributed to the significant amount of dumping around the clinic and the schoolyard. Since none of the missionaries on the trip had bothered to master the language of the people, the question was, like, brought up if she wondered if they could assess the people's needs and measure the effectiveness of their interventions. Like, they were just going on this trip, but they weren't actually helping these people. And I like this last line that was put in the story, and I'm going to quote it. Now it is clear to me what the promotional bulletin meant when it said, "Do something for your soul, go to Haiti." For this mission, Haiti is a place to relax, have nightly cocktail parties, and feel important as you watch the natives beg for your leftovers and trash. Returning to my homeland with the Haiti Mission Project did do something for my soul. It wounded it deeply. And so she, before the trip, she thought she would go to Haiti. She would be making a difference and everything. But as she saw the impact that the missionaries were supposed to be making, they were just going there not to brag about, like, their success, but the way that they were helping, they were doing it in a way that, like, wasn't beneficial to the people. It was only making them feel beneficial to themselves. Thank you.